weeks ago. This motion was introduced by Dr. Talcott, I believe, and it was voted down. After that, we had a motion around ethnic studies, and when people were speaking against that motion, many people said that they would vote for it if it was just about taking a class on race or ethnicity, but if it wasn't just limited to 4 departments, which is what the ethnic studies motion. So that's what this motion does. It actually gives us a chance. I think that what it is clear from this whole incident the last few weeks is that race and ethnicity is a powerful force in our society that has made people who are very powerful in the Senate feel that they are afraid to speak out. People who are less powerful in the Senate also feel afraid to speak out. It's gotten students involved in a campus where students have so many responsibilities that a lot of times they're not able to participate actively. And so I hope that you can remember back a couple of weeks when the students were making statements about how race and ethnicity affects their lives, the kinds of things that Jelani said and many of our other students said, and that we can really understand that today, even though society has changed a lot and gotten better in a lot of ways, we are still having a lot of challenges related to race and ethnicity. We can look at the prisons and we can see the problems with race and ethnicity. And we can look at hate crimes. Even today, hate crimes, the #1 hate crime target is still based on race, and it's still African Americans. A lot of people don't realize that. They kind of think that things have moved on, that we're in a post-racial society. I wish we were in a post-racial society. Believe me, I'm not fighting against a post-racial society. But everything that I've studied shows me we're not in a post-racial society. And here at Cal State LA, where the majority of our students are students of color, and we live in a city where we've been racked by racial violence on many occasions, we need to contribute to understanding race and ethnicity. And our students are the future leaders of the world, and I really urge you to please vote yes on this motion so that we can make our contributions to society. Thank you.
Do you want this?
No, you can hear me, can you?
No.
No, I'll talk loud.
There's a mic for our old people.
All right, I don't like mics. I don't like mics. I can be
No,
loud.
speak with your mic. We need it.
Okay. I want to speak in favor of the Porter motion. I did prefer the earlier motion, which would have required an ethnic studies class. But in lieu of that, I do favor the Porter motion for many reasons. One, I was walking down and I saw my daughter and her friend. She goes to school at one of the high schools here. So she's graduating this year from a public high school in Los Angeles. And after 4 years, she and all of her friends have never had a single discussion about race in the classroom. And so, I reflect on the sort of education we're providing students before they come to Cal State LA, and I think there's a real need to engage in these conversations. In talking with my colleagues and in our debate, it's also clear to me that we don't have enough conversations about race in the university, in the Senate. And so I welcome the opportunity to provide fora for our students and for our faculty to engage in the important work of analyzing and understanding the role of race and ethnicity in our society. I think it should be a requirement because it's clear to me that race and ethnicity are, as Dr. King said, some of the most powerful forces determining inequality, shaping violence, and misunderstanding and prejudice in our society. And so I'm very much in favor of the Porter motion. I urge you all to vote for it so we can begin a conversation that is started in the Senate and needs to expand out into the classroom. Thank you.
I also hate using a microphone, so forgive me. I'm speaking against the motion, and I do that not because of any any feelings against ethnic studies. I support ethnic studies, and I think we need to remember that this is a particular motion in the GE program, that this is not a larger statement about ethnic studies or its role in the university, that we're voting on one particular motion. And one of the things that has struck me in thinking about everything we've heard in the meetings in the past few weeks, and particularly about the students' stories, is that what I heard were not just stories about their racial or ethnic background and how that influenced their life, but also stories about how their social class position influenced their life and their gender influenced their life. That the idea of intersectionality is that all of these factors come together to make us who we are, and that we are situated in society based on how these things come together. And I think the language that's currently in the motion that specifically requires all classes to deal with the intersectionality of race, ethnicity, class, and gender will really give us the space to talk about these issues and to make it an important part of our GE program. So I speak against this motion not as a desire not to continue the conversations. I think we do need to continue the conversations, but more out of this desire that I see the language that's there in the motion currently to be much more inclusive and to be really reflecting the experiences of all of our students. When we speak about our students, we speak about our pride in our students, and part of that pride is not just about serving students who are members of underrepresented minority groups, but also our students who are working class, who are working full-time while they're attending school, and also that our campus is predominantly female. So these issues are all the issues that define all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Molina. I am a part-time instructor here. I teach Arts and Letters 101, and I want to speak in favor of the motion. I too like the idea that it should come from ethnic studies. One of the things that strikes me so important about this motion is not whether we're teaching about race and things of that nature, but I am more concerned about institutional effectiveness in graduating students. I know firsthand that it was my first Chicano Studies class that motivated me to look forward to my next Chicano Studies class. And eventually led to a master's degree in Chicano Studies. Eventually led to, that's fine, eventually led to a second degree in communication studies from this very university. I look around the room and I have the pleasure of saying many of you have been my professors and my mentors, but had it not been for that Chicano Studies class back at Mission College, way back when, I'm not sure the school system would have kept me. Now, this is about retention and graduation. This is about making sure that our students find themselves at the university. And I have to tell you, back in 2005, when Dr. Baskey and some of us went to Boston, I think it was, I spoke to, what was it, Western? When we spoke at that, I believe it was Western, if I'm not mistaken. And I said that the health of our studies of communication was in jeopardy back then because none of the texts that I see represent people of color. Now, I don't think the texts have changed. As a matter of fact, I know they haven't because I'm teaching in that area now, and my books still reflect Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and a lot of the Eurocentric thought that goes on in mainstream general education as the general requirement. And those texts don't reflect my history. They don't keep me involved in my class. As a matter of fact, if we don't diversify in terms of race, studying, yes? If we don't diversify in terms of studying race and class and social powers and social institutions, then I fear that we will not be institutionally effective here at Cal State LA. Estela Ben Simon at USC has recently done studies. And we know that a lot of our students come to us, right, from, poor places in our neighborhoods, right? From projects, from low-income places. They have, and typically, as a university, we've placed their success on their backs. They fail to succeed because they don't know how to manage their money. They fail to succeed because they're ill-prepared. They fail to succeed because of whatever faults that they come to the university with, it's their fault that they fail to succeed. But we know that they come to us with those problems. We know that. And to be institutionally effective, we should say that we accept you because we've accepted you, and we should teach them how to get ahead. And we do those courses generally through Chicano studies, ethnic studies, or I think this is a more watered down version, so pardon me for saying that. But I really, really support the motion because it's going to support retention and graduation more than anything. Thank you.
And one of the things that I've tried to do throughout the last several weeks is listen a lot. People have said to me, why haven't you been speaking on the floor? And my response has been, I'm happy to speak with you about it. But I think that primarily my role is to listen, and to listen to voices that are different than mine, and to listen to especially my colleagues of color across this college campus. And so I've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of colleagues of color within my department and within the college and outside of my college. And of course, as you would expect, you don't hear a consensus voice. Not everybody says the same thing. They said different things to me. There was not nearly anything close to a consensus about having these motions that were focused in particular departments being supported. But what I did hear a near consensus on was people saying we really need to have classes that have a focus, a substantial focus on race and ethnicity, and we need to make sure that they're quality classes. So how do we best do that? I've come to the position where, and I'll go clicker free for a second, I voted against Talcott first time around because I thought the language was difficult to interpret and operationalize, quite frankly. I didn't know how historically underrepresented exactly would flush its way out through the GE process and through G committees. This has more focus. So I don't think of this as Talcott 2. I don't think this is a flip-flop. I think that this is improved language. I really do, over Talcott. I think this has more precision to it about what the GE classes would be charged with doing, that a GE committee could then look at and vet as the GE committee has its annual work of saying what classes meet these criteria and which classes do not. I also like in this motion the fact that it explicitly talks about intersectionality, which the Talcott motion did not. This motion, I think, gives instructors flexibility. That may bother some people, but I think it's good because it makes it actually more coherent with the rest of the document and with the outcomes which talk about intersectionality and their importance. So I think this allows instructors to talk about race and ethnicity as primary issues, but also talk about how those connect to issues of class, of sexuality, of religion, of age, which we all agree in this room have to be part of the conversation about race and ethnicity. So I think that this language actually gives flexibility to the instructors teaching these. I don't think it locates it in departments, which was a reason why I was going to vote against the previous motion. I think it allows my colleagues in arts and letters, and English, and in liberal arts, and in television and film to teach these classes, which they should be able to do because they're experts in race and ethnicity. And so I think this is a step forward. Is it perfect? No. Are there going to be people who say it's redundant with language that's already within the policy? Yes, I grant that. But I think it's a step forward, so I support it.
Anyone seeking to speak against?
Senator Klassen has said that this language is definitely an improvement on the earlier motion. I definitely favor the intersectionality But I also agree with what he said, that this language is slightly redundant compared to what is already there in the policy. I'm sorry if I'm going to be a little repetitive, but I do agree with what Senator Peterson has said. Diversity is a very, very, very broad topic. And what we are doing is we are narrowing what our students are going to study. We are saying only, look at the last line, courses focusing on race and ethnicity. Diversity is really broad. If my students want to learn something about handicap, want to learn about global cultural competencies, there are so many. It's a really broad topic. That is why I urge the senators to understand that this motion, again, it's really making diversity very narrow. Thank you so much.
Hello, guys. My name is Sarai, and I come from Pasadena City College. And as I get ready to transfer within the next fall to Cal State LA to apply in the fall, I hear about the things that are going here on campus. And as a student and as an undocumented student, I want to know more about, ethnic studies. I don't have sort of a background behind where I come from and this and that. And I'm sure a lot of your students do too, because you guys have a large population of undocumented students here. And as I look into it, I support the students here at Cal State LA for what they believe in, and also what's going on right now with, yes, it's diverse, but it's a step forward towards learning a little bit more about something that gets thrown underneath the rug. So thank you for your time.
Well, I'll try and talk without the microphone since it really does bother me to hold it. I want to address specifically what Senator Clausen said, because I think the very nature of the flexibility that you spoke about is also what makes this problematic as policy language. That when I think about what's going to happen if we pass this language is that when this gets down to the committees deciding, there's going to have to be an interpretation. What does it mean to focus on race ethnicity? Is it enough to have 30% of the course content? Is it 50% of the course content? Or does it need to be 80 or 90%? The fact that that's not specified means that curriculum committees are just going to be making these decisions without real guidance. There aren't learning outcomes attached to say, what does it mean to focus specifically on race ethnicity beyond what's already in the diversity learning outcomes? So while I appreciate the apparent flexibility of this motion, I see that that flexibility is actually a problem for this motion in terms of putting it into a policy document.
Speaking in favor of the motion, Senator Klein.
I was also against the Talcott motion. I was also against the last motion. And my gut feeling last week when this arose is that I'm against this motion. But I'm not against the motion because I don't believe in what the motion is saying. I'm against the motion because I thought last week was a disgrace. And please, if we could stop with the applause. I think it's ridiculous and it makes me more nervous. I thought last week was a disgrace, and it was a disgrace to free association of views, and in many, many ways. That being said, about 6 years ago now, we had a new president elected, first time an African-American president in this country. And a lot of people, myself included, hoped that this president was going to spend a lot of time speaking about racial and ethnic issues. And unfortunately, aside from two very eloquent speeches, that issue has gone by the wayside again. So the question becomes, when do we start this discussion? And where do we start this discussion? And we have an option here, I believe, of starting this discussion right now with this proposal. So while I understand Senator Peterson's problems, we also have writing courses that curriculum committees have to interpret in terms of how much writing exactly do students have to do to call it a writing course. And I'm not sure they ever agree exactly on that. Those same types of arguments are going to be here. So I want to say that I am changing my vote now, and I am supporting this motion, and please, don't applaud.
Is there somebody seeking the floor to, Senator, to